Hey, this is Dale Tinsley. You're listening to the Connect podcast. Our purpose is to guide you to connect with yourself so that you can connect with others and live a life of meaning and value. Continuing the series, Connecting with Ourselves. Peace be with you. Welcome back to Connect. Hope you guys are in great spirits, tuned into yourself, your genuineness, going through the process of the refinement, identifying our character defects, one day at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time. Today's episode is titled Surrender to Connect. And actually, today's episode is the last episode in this series, Connecting with Ourselves. So I'm excited to connect all the dots, have a conversation, and really dig into it. And excited to start a new chapter as well. But before we get into a new chapter, we need to solidify this foundation that we've nurtured, cultured within ourselves. So let's run through the process. And keep in mind, all of these layers that we're going to discuss starting with episode 1 are designed for us to be able to look internally at ourselves and even have that moment where we step outside of ourselves for perspective so that we can look at our own behavior objectively and truly hold ourselves accountable after reflecting on it, acknowledging it, recognizing it, and truly owning it. Truly owning it. So episode 1, or the beginning of the process, is owning our reality. And think of it, if you reflect back, it's really a starting point. I am here, this is where I'm at, and we are doing the internal checks. We're looking at ourselves, we're taking inventory of the reality that we're currently in that moment. And there's some acceptance that's layered in there, just naturally. Because that is the starting point when we truly decide, okay, I want to start the refinement. I want to start working on myself. Next, we slide on over to foundation. And we got into the 2 main categories with foundation, which are the ego and all of those traits and behaviors and thoughts and patterns that run underneath the ego. And then our true selves and our genuineness, love, compassion, creativity, movement, energy, high vibration. We ran through being able to identify all of those things within ourselves in order to acknowledge them, recognize them, reflect on them, own them, find the why behind the character defects of the ego, and then begin to deconstruct them, tear them apart, peel the onion, deal and deal and deal and deal, until that becomes a lesson learned, and we gain wisdom from it. Anything that's got a shaky foundation will eventually crumble under the right circumstances. So the foundational work that we each do within ourselves, repetition, experience, until it becomes second nature. Refining our bodies, refining our minds, refining our spirits. And that all takes maintenance, daily maintenance, to keep things running smooth, to keep things in order, to keep things on the right path. And I do my hand like that because the path is not straight and narrow. The path is gonna curve, there's gonna be bend in it. We're gonna have to adjust because you may have the purest of intentions coming from your heart and be connected to a moment and have a vision, but life will throw curveballs at you and we have to adapt. We have to overcome. We have to stay in our growth mindset and stay solution-based. Keep our intentions pure, stay focused, and accept how it turns out. It's not always going to be perfect, but the goal is progress, not perfection. Then we covered focus, and what I just described kind of sets focus up to show its importance, to show how focus really, it will keep you on the path. It will keep you one step at a time, moving forward, building momentum, staying engaged in the present. And also focus will be a tell to us that maybe what we're involved in, we're not into it. Our hearts aren't into it, our minds aren't into it. Maybe it's something you really want to do, but where you are in your journey, this isn't the time for it. And that's okay. During those couple episodes and those layers, we begin to identify resistance within ourselves. As we're doing the work, we can feel resistance. This is painful. It's new. I don't want to do this. And we identify our egos at this point. The negative talk, the doubt, the fear of the unknown, stepping out of your comfort zone. All of these excuses that will come like darts. And if you feed into them, they'll continue. The ego has got to be dismantled. For each of us, the different character defects that the ego latches onto are going to be unique to each of us because we've all had different experiences, different stressors, different traumas, different moments that we might have felt like we weren't good enough or we were lacking in something. Whatever it is, the ego will latch onto it and use that against us. And that keeps us from being engaged in the present. That keeps us from truly experiencing all of the amazing layers that life has to offer in situations and moments. And ask yourself, how much have you missed out on because of fear, because of doubt, because of your own perceived judgment of something else, or even judgment on yourself? I can't go to that event. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I'll probably fail. All of that negative vibe is created by the ego. So what if you fail? At least you tried. So what if it didn't work out exactly as you planned it? It's your moment. Nobody pops out knowing everything. No one is above us and no one is below us. We each have our value, and we each have our own experience and our own hero's journey. It takes courage to step into the unknown. And then after you do it, you realize that wasn't so bad. It was all in my head. So we've identified the ego. We know his tricks, and they can be real subtle. And feeding into all that egotistical behavior and allowing our character defects from the ego to run wild, that brings us to the next episode, judgment and regret. First is the judgment, which I just covered a couple layers of that. After the judgment comes the regret. The regret, I could have done something different. Even the regret, regret is tough. Whew. Regret is miserable. You ever regret not acting? I could have stepped in. I should have. We will beat ourselves up with regret. And a little bit of suffering from that, I think, is necessary and actually healthy, so that you learn the lesson to not allow your ego to run you down that. You had the red flags went off. You don't regret something you're totally hands off about. The regret comes from not acting. The regret comes from the choice that you know you could have made a better choice. You didn't listen to your instinct. You weren't connected to your genuineness. And now you have that bitter pill of regret. Lean into it, deal with it, own it, push through. Gain the wisdom from the moment and the lessons learned. And then forgive yourself and let it go. As you let it go, pick yourself back up and get back on that horse. And lead with love. And what if you give love to everybody else? Well, that's just who I am. I'm a giver. That well is eventually going to run dry. If the captain of the ship isn't in a good headspace, if the mother of the house isn't in a good headspace, what value do they bring if they're not at their best? Because they're not loving themselves, putting the attention that's required on themselves, the maintenance that's required on themselves. It's required. We have to value ourselves and love ourselves and nurture ourselves, build ourselves, dig into ourselves for what we really need to feel alive, so that we can be the best version of ourselves for everyone around us. Happy wife, happy life. We've all been around people that are pleasant and people that are just misery just permeates out of them. And I've been through it. It's rough. But you got to swim through that darkness and really take the self-accountability and own it in order to see land and see that beacon of where you're swimming to, digging into the internal work to continue to push and refine and refine and refine. At this point, you have a different perspective of connecting with yourself. And that perspective is, I would imagine for you, it's opened up externally and internally. And now your perception is shifting. And I hope it brings you to a place where you realize that anything is possible. Working the tools that you have, your awareness, and the layers that we've covered so far, having the honesty and the courage to look yourself in the mirror, to hold yourself accountable and accept what you see. And with acceptance, that doesn't mean that we can't influence. That doesn't mean that we can't change what we're seeing or who we are. A big layer of limiting chaos and suffering of others, our own suffering, is understanding the ego, our genuineness, the mind, which is the ego, our pure consciousness, which is love, light, radiating, and the feelings that are generated from each. The feelings that come from the mind and the ego, and the feelings that come from pure love, pure connection, pure consciousness, being of service to others, nurturing, empathy. Emotional intelligence is the term for having the presence of mind to realize I'm not the mind. When these emotions come up and come at me and I feel like I'm getting hit left and right, I have the awareness to recognize that. Let it go, and then react with thought. And that emotional intelligence could save your life. That emotional intelligence could keep you from a really, really bad situation. And matching energy, having the emotional intelligence in a moment to not match the energy of the altercation, of the disrespect, of the trigger that's coming from you. The other person may not even, it may not even be a rock that they're throwing at you verbally or mentally or emotionally. It may just be something within ourselves that's triggered, and we have the mind reacting to past trauma, unhealed situations, wounds, traumas, events. There's that trigger, the mind, here come the thoughts, the emotion that's tied to that. Having the emotional intelligence and the awareness to recognize it for what it is, and that it's something that we need to process and deal with, to free ourselves of it. To free ourselves of it and to push forward. Having that emotional intelligence in those moments really elevates your consciousness and is is a key and amazing level to cultivate. And swimming through that emotional intelligence and realizing I don't react like I used to. And people may notice it. And if they don't, it doesn't matter. It's not their hero's journey. As you continue to refine it and build momentum on all of these different layers, you hit gratitude. And we dig into gratitude and truly understand how gratitude keeps us connected to our genuineness. It could always be worse. And I don't believe in the comparison game, because comparison is the thief of joy. But in life, the rocks that get thrown at us may not even be your fault. Tragedy hits. It could always be worse. I have a saying, if I'm not getting punched, stabbed, or on fire, it'll be all right. Emotional intelligence ties into the ability for us to have clarity and really see gratitude for what it is. And be grateful for where we are. Be grateful for the people in our lives. Be grateful for the trials and tribulations that we've gone through, that we made it out the other end of it. Whoa, glad that's over. Without those trials and tribulations, how would we be stretched to learn and come out of our comfort zone and grow and expand and gain wisdom, slay those dragons, become adaptable, be battle tested? Being grateful for everything that you have is the total opposite of coming from a place of lack. I don't have this, I want that, things will be better if only I had this. Is that going to attract, staying in that fixed mindset, is that going to attract abundance? Are you radiating love and energy? What kind of frequency are you putting off in that state of lack? Low-level consciousness. Gratitude, it's uplifting. It feeds the connection. Gratitude is amazing. Getting into ego, the conversation that we had with Brian about ego and all of the different layers and the nuances and the character defects, the selfishness, really peeling the onion on ego. And why peel the onion on ego? To understand it. How can we wrap our heads around something fully if we don't understand it? Open, honest conversation. Vulnerability. Of what? Of being real, of sharing from the heart. The layers of the ego and how complicated that can be and how subtle that can be. I learned from Deepak Chopra years ago to use the heart. When the mind has a thought, you run it through your heart and you'll feel a very subtle pulse. It'll be a positive pulse or a negative pulse. If you're in doubt, is this thought selfish? is this thought of the ego. I want to do this. I want to accomplish this. It involves being of service to others. But is it being in service to others so that I can get the kudos? Or I can get the, hey, that guy does this for people. The heart won't lie. And in the self-reflection and all of that work that you're going to do and sit in meditation and process it, run it through your heart. The ego is the ultimate trickster. The ego's always looking for his end. To do what? Put somebody down, put you above people. It doesn't even have to be a person. It could be an event. Hey, there's this event. You want to go? No, I don't do that. Have you ever been? No, we don't do that. Maybe you've heard people say that. Maybe you've said it. I challenge you like this. How do you know you don't enjoy it? And where is the judgment coming from of the ego for you to think that you're better than that? Or what's offered or enjoyed by others can't bring value and meaning to your life? That sounds like a fixed mindset of something closed. And for us to be able to enjoy this life fully and connect with ourselves, we have to open our minds and open our hearts. Take in new information. Shift perspectives. Be of service to others. Come out of our comfort zone. And all of those things are what? Transitions. Transitions, because we're always growing. You started off tiny, and then you were a baby, and then a toddler, and so on, and so on, and so on. A seed. The seed pops, seedling, grows, tree, fruit. Understanding transitions helps us be fluid. It helps us understand that everything is shifting. Nothing is super stable. Adaptability, solution-minded. Transition also gives us the insight of preparation and understanding the uncomfortableness that comes with something new when we're in a transition or transitioning to a new job, a new place to live, a new state, a new country, a new way of thinking. And what's the one constant that's always going to show up? The resistance. And the ego. The ego doesn't want transition. The ego says, no, we don't need a transition. You're good right where you are, under my control, under my thumb. I'll keep you in doubt, fear, right here, judgment. The judgment leads to regret if you're owning it and self-accountable. The ego doesn't want change. It doesn't want transition. So how do we tell the ego, why don't you go sit down, I got this? You got to be sick and tired of being sick and tired and pull your power from the ego. How much are you going to have to deal with before you're sick and you yell, kick, and scream and say, I'm going to make a different choice? Do you see it clearly? Do you see the same pattern of the ego, which leads to what? Misery. It takes courage to be genuine. and be self-accountable and be open and be honest and be vulnerable. It just requires you stepping out of your comfort zone, having faith, having trust, having courage. This is your hero's journey. The mindset, for those things I just described, the mindset. When we were young, everything was exciting. It was exciting, growth mindset, new things, new things, new things. And then the ego shuts that down. No, we need you in a fixed mindset. No thinking outside the box. You're just going to accept. Accept what you're told. Accept the programming. Accept the conditioning. Well, I hope at this point in the process, you are unraveling the conditioning and the programming that you've received and seeing it for what it is. Someone else's programming, and they taught you the same programming? Or what someone else thought was the right way to do things? And you're going to accept, well, that's how I was taught. That's what I do. We have to own our own reality, be self-accountable, and listen to our hearts. That spirit in there, your genuineness is dying to run the show. Dying to run the show, waiting to kick the ego out. Go sit down, I got this. The spiritual awakening, right? That's what we're working on here. A lot of people think it's rainbows and butterflies. You get to that point. But the pain and the misery and the hell you're going to go through to get there, that's very real. The ego's got to die off. Layers of the ego have to die off for something new to grow. And you will feel like you're losing your mind. And that's part of the process. I saw a film, say Guy Ritchie directed it, called Revolver. That was the best on-camera scene, description, reality that I've ever seen of someone facing their ego and the chaos. Whew! You guys got to check that one out. Revolver. Guy Ritchie. It was on Netflix. I want to say maybe 2018. Amazing movie. You don't really, it doesn't come full circle. I watched it twice. It doesn't come full circle until after the film and you're kind of just taking it all in. But going to war with the ego, that's what we got to do. Because if not, you're going to stay, you can be building momentum and then stop. Backslide, the ego is going to continue to push and keep that. So the mindset that we have is critical. Growth mindset, stretching, pushing, looking out into the future, looking deep within ourselves. Because it's our hero's journey. We're not here to just sit back and accept things as they are when we've gotten a taste of what could be. Everyone's hero's journey is totally unique. We each bring value and meaning. We're all connected. Your circle of influence may be small, it may be huge, but we all influence each other. You notice how the most profound influence that hits you right here is when someone is vulnerable, totally genuine, totally honest, totally open, totally real. And that person, they have the courage to be that way because they accept themselves. They've removed the mask of the ego and said, this is who I am. Judge me all you want. It's just your opinion. Vulnerability is where we need to be to communicate clearly our needs, our wants. And it's the best of humanity. It's real and it's raw. How much of that do you see in society when you look around? What's cultivated? Judgment, regret. What's cultivated in society? The ego's character defects. You're not good enough if you don't have this. You need this to be seen that way. All of these exterior shiny things that don't fulfill us. On the spiritual side, the cultivation, faith, realizing that we are part of something bigger, realizing when our minds are in a lower state of consciousness because of our reality, the vibration and the energy that puts off, and the misery. And on the opposite side, when we're being of service to someone or something else, when we're leading with courage, when we're being genuine, when we're leading with love and compassion and empathy and truth, the energy that's associated with that, people die for that. With that faith and that hope, all of that. And you say, is that just random? You get to the point that you realize we're connected to something higher. That's the connection to God, the Creator, Source, consciousness. This didn't just happen. Don't you see that? Don't you feel that? Even if it's only been once or twice or 3 times in your life that you felt something incredible. You felt a connection that made every hair on your body stand up. That brought tears to your eyes. Tears of gratitude for having that experience. It's all intelligent design. None of it is random. There are no coincidences. It's all synchronicities of our lives entwining, moments in time that happen to teach us things. And we have to have the faith and the courage to stand up and to go through it, to be vulnerable, to lead with love on our hero's journey. Making the time for ourselves. We covered a little bit of that earlier. The nurturing, the self-understanding, the meditation, the lifting of weights, exercise, time with friends, time with family. But when do we process all of it? We have to self-reflect. We have to make the time to self-reflect, to truly take it in and allow it to swim through us, to allow everything to shake out, all the moments, instead of just pushing them aside and pretending they didn't happen. Processing our lives, our hero's journey, making the time to self-reflect is that opportunity. And the value that it brings it's critical. All of these layers that we've discussed so far play their part. They're all tools in our shed that we have to refine, understand, wrap our head around, and polish. Let's get into intention and attention. Through the past year, we've identified the ego. We know the ego's intentions. Are you the ego? No. You're not the ego. The ego is the mind, the chaos, the doubt, the suffering, the misery. All of those selfish behaviors that we allow to go unchecked, or we check them. The thought comes in, you don't feed it. Let it go. Because your spirit is in control. Your genuineness is in control. Your intentions are pure. You're of service to others. You're honoring yourself. You respect yourself. You respect your friends. You respect your family. You're grateful for your life. You're grateful for the trials and tribulations that almost broke you, because they showed you that you're battle tested now of what you've been through. They made you who you are. Now, you could have gotten bitter, but you chose to be better. You chose to deal with it and put the proper attention with the right intentions to continue to build momentum and push and refine and better yourself. The best version of you. One of the toughest layers to get to is acceptance. On any issue, because it means we need to be self-accountable. It means we need to own it, at least our part in it. Or if it's something outside of yourself, let's say a death in the family, we have to process it. And the mind, the ego will jump right in. It doesn't want to deal with it. Denial. The anger, the aggression, the frustration that comes with it. And the layers to fully get to acceptance, trying to negotiate your way out of it, the depression that's caused. And these layers, they overlap sometimes. And then finally you come out the other side and hit acceptance. And full acceptance takes that process multiple times to own that reality. If it's a life-changing reality. It's tough. But not dealing with it, it will always be on your shoulders. It will always hold you back in your mind. And making peace with it and going through the process to get to full acceptance, it takes courage. It's an emotional process. Might have some regret in there. So-and-so passed, I should have called him. My instinct told me to call him a week ago, and I didn't. That instinct is there for a reason. It's a gift. It could be the Holy Spirit guiding you, leading you to do something that you need to do. That's part of your passion and your purpose. But after we swim through all of that, and it's difficult, we get to the healing. After we peel that onion, we get to some healing. And the load is lightened a little bit. The load is lightened. We can feel a little bit of a shift. We're able to exhale a little deeper and have more peace. Which leads us to the surrender. We see the ego. We see the lies, the chaos, the misery of the ego. We know that's not us. We weren't put here to be miserable. We weren't put here to just follow without thought. Look around you and look at society and the world. You think it's headed in the right direction? Doesn't seem natural. Doesn't seem like we're on an organic path of things unfolding. It seems very scripted. Because some people are totally consumed with their ego and greed and power. But that's outside of ourselves. But we can see it. On the internal, getting to the point of being humble enough to reach out and surrender. And say, God, I need your help. Help me. Why? Why am I going through this and the misery and all of that misery from the ego and the continued pattern over and over and over? Have you felt that? Have you made yourself crazy yet with the pattern over and over and over of the same choices? I know I have. It was miserable. In the interview that we did with Edgar, he has that moment of surrender. I can't take it anymore. I give it to you, God. In the interview with Dillon, Dillon has that moment in that truck. And then he has another moment where he goes home and he focuses on it. And he goes through all of it and he surrenders. I surrender to you, God. Help me. I can't do this without you. I need you. I need the partnership. Guide me. Help me. Open my mind. Open my heart. Having the humility to get to that point, pulling the power from the ego, shifting out of that, and realizing we can't do this by ourselves. We need partnership. If we were meant to do it all by ourselves, we would have been put here by yourself. That is the connection. Pulling the power from the ego and surrendering to God. Connecting to your spirit and connecting to God. Being in partnership. Showing up for yourself. To be the best version of you. The temptations, the ego, it's going to be there forever, and we have to have the clarity to see it. Have the courage to see it within ourselves. The honesty to see it within yourself. And when you do that, nobody's in your head with you, judging you. Push all that out and focus down. This is your hero's journey. The process, all leading to the point of surrendering to the Creator, to connect at the most profound level you can imagine. To having the clarity to truly see our egos, and that is simply a product of whatever conditioning and programming you've absorbed. We're spirits trapped in these bodies, having this experience. All pushing. Seems like survival for many these days. A lot of people are alive, but are they really living? And I'm not talking about the fancy car and the big house. I'm talking about genuineness and the joy that comes from here. Joy, happy, being of service to others. We choose what we want our hero's journey to be. We choose how we react to life. We choose what comes out of our mouths, fed by what thoughts we have, the emotional intelligence, seeing the ego, being connected to our genuineness. Those are our choices. Surrender to connect. Surrender to connect. I hope this series has helped open your mind and open your heart. Sincerely hope and wish it's brought meaning and value to you. It's been quite the journey over the past year. And it will take layers and layers if the inside process is new to you. Go back and run through the series again. Next week, we're going to kick off a new series, Limitless Potential, Endless Refinement. That's going to have interviews. It's going to be wide open. We're going to cover workouts and the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, and really get into some more color. Connecting with ourselves was more of the foundation, starting point. But feel free to run through the series again, download the Connect Journal for each episode again. And it's just like listening to music or anything that you practice, or even watching a film. The details start to come out on the second and the third application that we take it in. I'd like to take this time to thank Keely Anglin for her great design work and all of her marketing expertise. Very grateful. I'd also like to thank Andreas Fransos for his great camera work, editing, and being part of the team. And I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me to share some thoughts and some visions, and one of my purposes and a big passion of mine with Connect. Thank you for opening your mind and opening your heart. I'll see you soon. God bless. Thanks for joining us at the Connection Studio. You can support us by sharing with others and posting to social media. Keep doing the internal work, as it will truly make all the difference. God bless.